from our break at 1:55. There are a couple of announcements I'd like to make before we go on to item 14, and that was that item 13 was moved to Thursday, tomorrow, and that's the California Transportation Commission Equity Initiatives update. And that was at the request of the presenter. So that will be tomorrow morning. And then we are going to have the CAPDI item, that's item 17, that will be heard after 3:05 today in deference to the Secretary of Transportation's schedule. So we will hear it, but we will hear it after 3:05 for those of you who are interested in tuning in on this particular item. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm very interested in the item 14, economic impact of transportation investments in California. Thank you, Justin and Dr. Black.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tab 14 is an informational item on the economic impact of transportation spending in California.
Could you turn up your volume?
Yes. Is that better?
No, a little higher. A little higher.
How about now? Good. All right. Apologies. Dr. Allison Black is the chief economist at the American Road and Transportation Builders Association and recently completed an analysis of the impact of combined local, state, and federal transportation spending on California's economy. The study was commissioned by the California Alliance for Jobs, the California Transit Association, the League of California Cities, and the California State Association of Counties. Dr. Black will present a summary of her findings, which estimate a minimum of $200 billion annually in economic activity that result from the spending on roads, bridges, and transit. Dr. Black.
Hi, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Justin, for your help in arranging the ability to share with you all some of the findings of the report that we released just a few weeks ago. If you don't mind going to the next slide. The goal of our study was really to quantify the economic impact of highway, street, bridge, and transit investment. As Justin mentioned, not just the capital investment, but the operational side, and including revenues from both state and federal sources, as well as local investment, which is quite significant in California. That's something that's a little bit unique to the state compared to other states across the country. So there was a lot of information that we put into it, and I'll walk you through some of the results as well as some of the assumptions, and happy to answer additional information in the Q&A if folks are interested in more details. But the output that you'll see on the website, we really wanted to also make this interactive and allow users to really drill down to those economic impacts, not only by industry, how this impacts not just construction and transit operations, but other sectors of the economy, and also at the local level. So users can go look at the website, they can select exactly what they want to take a look at, and there are even PDFs that are up there breaking down those economic impacts to the county level, because this truly, these truly are investments that impact every community across the state. So the next slide, I'll walk you through just the two different types of economic impacts we quantify. And transportation investment is a little bit unique because we're able to capture the long run benefits in addition to the short run, what we call the immediate economic impact. So in the short run, as you have money that's being spent to support the operations and capital investments related to highways and transit, you'll have companies that maybe are improving a road, building a transit station. That type of activity is very quantifiable. You will have that business buy goods and services from other businesses in California. So there'll be that immediate economic impact, and that's what we call that direct and indirect business impact. But what you'll have in addition to that is as the employees of these companies go out and spend their wages, maybe at this time of the year, they're buying school supplies, going out to dinner, renting an apartment, buying a house, that creates an induced impact throughout the economy. And that's what we're able to track in that short run piece. So it's a very comprehensive number. We also look at business output, how much businesses are selling through that ripple effect. And of course, the jobs that are supported or created. And I'll walk you through some of those results in a minute. But with transportation investment over the longer run, what we're also able to quantify is how when you make improvements to the transit and highway and street system, how are the users of those systems impacted? So depending on the mix of projects, we see reduces in congestion as more people take transit systems, they can get to their destinations faster. So there are a number of other benefits that we also capture on the user side. And then I'll talk at the end a little bit about some of the increased productivity, which is not part of this report. So the results that we really quantify, I think, are just the minimum. So the next slide, what does this mean for California? As mentioned, there is a very, very significant ripple effect of these investments just throughout the entire economy. Some very big numbers. Of course, California is a big state, but we looked at a 10-year time horizon, and I would add that, you know, everything is about the assumptions. We are not assuming an increase in federal investment like is being discussed as with earlier presenters. So these numbers, again, very conservative. We're expecting just modest growth in transportation revenues over the next decade based on some of Caltrans forecasts and other documented public outlooks on some of these revenue sources. But overall, very significant economic impacts, about $2 billion over, or excuse me, $2 trillion over those that time period, those next 10 years, just under $200 billion per year. And you can see the top few numbers are those user benefits that I talked about as those improvements are implemented, savings to users of the system. And then I'll walk through some of the increase in the business sales and output. But the bottom line, for about every dollar invested, there's a return of about $4.30 in California. So very significant returns. So the next slide goes through a little bit some of just the business output. Again, as work is being done, as these systems are under operation, they'll be purchasing goods and services from other businesses, and this is just within the state, the business activities. So you can see sales and revenue by California businesses grows to about $115 billion on average by 2030. And again, any additional increases we're talking about in terms of federal, state, or local investment would change this outlook, but quite a bit. You think about the 3.5 million businesses in California, that adds up over that time period. And on the website, we actually have this broken down by industry, so you can really take that deep dive. The next slide shows the employment impact. So these are jobs throughout the economy supported by that transportation investment. And the average, it works out to about 15,000 jobs per 1 billion invested. And I know that, of course, the commission and many other groups, there are several other multipliers out there. The reason our jobs number is a little bit bigger is we're taking into account not just the jobs through the capital spending, the actual construction and maintenance work, but also the operational side. So when you break it down, the estimates that we have based on that Bureau of Economic Analysis input-output multipliers for the construction side, the jobs per billion is just in that 10 to 11,000 range, which is very consistent with what you all have. And then it's the transit operational side where there are more jobs required to perform those tasks, and that's kind of inflating, or not inflating, but increasing some of these numbers from what I know this group may be familiar with. But overall, a significant number of jobs supported, on average about 700,000 per year. And the average wage for those employees is over 43,000 a year too. So many of these are very good paying jobs. And the next slide just shows some of that breakdown among different industries. Again, we're calculating that induced ripple effect way down. So that's why we see demand in a number of different sectors, just because the employees of a lot of the groups we're talking about are going to be out spending their wages and creating that additional demand throughout the economy. So the next slide just goes through how those earnings, some of the other things contribute to California's gross state product. And of course, California, about $3.2 trillion a year in GSP, one of the biggest economies, certainly in the country, if not in the world. And when you look at the impact of the transportation investment we're talking about, that accounts for about 1.6% of the state's GSP, so not insignificant. In the next slide, the other factor that we wanted to look at was really trying to estimate the tax revenues associated with this economic activity that is in billions. So this looks at individual income taxes, business, corporate taxes, as well as sales and use taxes. And we use some data from the California Department of Tax and the administration, as well as the IRS and Census Bureau, to try and estimate, when you have this economic activity, what does that mean for federal, state, and local taxes? So this is an estimate of how that provides additional revenue to be reinvested in the state. So the last slide I have, the next one, is just very briefly, the report cites quite a few economic studies. There's a lot of literature about how transportation investment really drives increases in productivity. And this is not as straightforward to quantify, so that is not in the report, but that's why we really stress that the benefits we're talking about that we have quantified are just the bare minimum. But you think about something like what we call agglomeration economies, and that's where businesses, similar businesses and suppliers, locate in a centralized region where they can share resources, access to labor. You think about Silicon Valley, the defense industry in California, the entertainment industry. Those are all great examples of agglomeration economies. And it's well shown there are significant links between investing in transportation and really helping to facilitate that type of economic activity, which again, a little harder to put a dollar figure on, but there's no question that over time, businesses will, as they spend less on transportation logistics, this really helps them have additional resources to reinvest in other parts of their business. So with that, I know that's a lot of information in a short time, but deeply appreciative of the opportunity to be here and share this with you all. Happy if there are questions at any point, my contact information, and just appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Justin, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, Chair, no, and we do not have any public comment at this time. Thank you.
That's fine. And colleagues, let me know, turn on your video if you have some questions. I have one, and that is, I wanted to ask about the green economy and whether you were adding in any of the work that's being done with new jobs created for growing the grid and powering a lot of our mobility with new fuels and new technology like EVs.
So that definitely came into account, thinking about the revenues going on, that our economy is going to be changed. And actually, some of the Caltrans 5-year estimates, I scaled back a little bit our assumptions about the revenue growth. So it's factored in there. We do not separately, and that would be a great project, I think. We do not have additional estimates for things like building the infrastructure for EV vehicles, that type of investment. So I think that would definitely be an additional benefit unless that spending is kind of captured, but mostly we looked at that highway operational, transit operational, and capital piece, which does not include that. So I think that's a great add-on perhaps for the future, that there are going to be benefits of some of those investments, definitely. So it's the flip side. We think about the fuel efficiency as impacting the revenue side, but there's the economic benefit of that activity as well.
Thank you, Dr. Black. Darnell, Commissioner Grisby.
Hey, thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Allison, and a pleasure to meet you and actually see the presentation. I noticed you referenced the APTA report, and I happen to be the former director of policy for APTA, and we produced that report when I was there. So we did take an attempt to measure productivity when it comes to public transportation, and found that the majority of the impact of public transportation actually came from that productivity impact. And just wondering what kind of challenges that you had trying to come up with that number for this report.
It is very challenging to come up with those numbers. And that's one reason I emphasize some of those long-term impacts are very difficult to quantify. So that some of those estimates are built on work done by APTA and other groups as well, is definitely part of that. transit user benefit number, which is why I think you see that is a very high number. There are a lot of benefits to transit investment, but it's really hard to capture. What is the benefit to somebody when they can live in an area where they want to, because they can take and rely on that transit to get to their jobs in an effective time. When you don't have those long travel times, how that impacts where people choose to live in communities. So there's a lot that just on the economic side is not included in that benefit piece.
Okay. Thank you very much. Commissioner Liu.
Thank you, Chair Norton. Thank you, Dr. Black, for this analysis. This is obviously really difficult to do, and I thought I had a hard job, but when I saw your presentation, I would imagine that, there is a cost associated with congestion, right? So you're looking at a lot of the benefits and everything, but the investments matter because if the investments don't solve or alleviate congestion, they're actually going to have a cost associated with them. So it must be really hard to try to figure out what variables to include, how to include them, how to count them, and what assumptions to make and all of this. I will say that I saw your presentation before I headed up to Northern California, and I had to look up this agglomeration economies phrase. So it was nice that you explained it, because you explained it exactly what it said when I Googled it. But then I had this really weird thing happen where I was up in Emeryville, and I had an opportunity for the very first time to use the Bay Wheels bike rental. And I had, okay, let me try this. So it's all done through Lyft, and for $3.28, I got to ride this bicycle for a half hour. And I was riding the bicycle, and I look over and I see Pixar. Pixar. And their studios is right there. And then I looked to my left across the street, and there were all these businesses that were supporting, Pixar movie development. And I thought to myself, that's exactly what she's talking about. And so it was, of course, rather ironic because I was riding a rented bicycle at the time. So, even though I was technically on vacation, I just want all the commission and everyone listening to know that I was still working hard on CTC matters while up there. But I think, when we take a step back from this, we just have to say it is obvious that these investments in transportation infrastructure are critical, because not only do they allow us to get from point A to point B, but there are all these benefits that you've identified. So thank you for your study, and thank you for briefing us on it.
Thank you, my pleasure. And that is a great example of exactly what we're talking about, which sometimes is on the harder side to quantify, but there's no question transportation investment absolutely touches every person in the state.
Yes. We wanted, even though this is a public document, I just want to ask that as we start referring to some of these facts and figures, especially as people are starting to ask, what is the value of our gas tax and what we're investing in, we have your permission to use these slides and others as we're discussing some of these benefits. Yes?
Absolutely. And I think this is really, really important too. In the study, you can look at the methodology. These are very sound economic techniques that are very well documented and used through a variety of sources with government data. So I think that's really important to just stress with folks the credibility of when you're saying every dollar returns $4.30, that really is backed up.
Yes, that's an extraordinary number, and we will be talking about that quite often. Colleagues, do you have any other questions of Dr. Black? Commissioner Inman.
I had a question about the cost, the economic disincentive of congestion. And, the Texas Transportation Institute every year does a study and tells us who has the worst congestion. And then I think they put a dollar value on that. So does that go into your calculation?
It doesn't. So what we're looking at is if you spend a certain amount of money, here's that economic ripple effect. So it's assuming that, through those user benefits, there are, depending on the mix of projects within that model, there are savings because, the projects that are undertaken, there are improvements to the system, so people do spend less time in congestion. So that is one of the benefits as mobility increases. But we're not assuming a huge shift in modal share, anything like that. But you are correct. There certainly are, that mix of projects is important in that part of the model.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. With that, there's no public comment on this item, so I just wanted to thank you for your incredible report and these wonderful facts that we will be using quite often.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. With that, we're going to go to state and federal legislative matters. Paul?
Commissioners, tab 15 has 3 recommended actions related to state and federal legislative matters. The first action is to accept the staff report on state legislation that provides an update on the status of the state budget and policy bills. Regarding the state budget, your book item contains a summary of the status of each of the major transportation infrastructure items in the budget. Secretary Kim had discussed this earlier, so I won't go through those again. Regarding the policy bills, the Commission has a support position on 2 bills that are both pending a final hearing in the Assembly Appropriations Committee next week. Both bills would implement recommendations from the Commission's 2020 annual report. The first is SB 339 by Senator Wiener, which would authorize a new road charge pilot program to test revenue collection. And the second is AB 604 by Assemblymember Daley, which would permanently dedicate the interest earnings in the road maintenance and rehabilitation account to the shop. Staff are not recommending the Commission adopt positions on any additional bills at this time. However, the second action in this item would allow the Commission's Executive Director, upon consultation with the Chair and the Vice Chair, to take positions on legislation for the remainder of the legislative session. And the reason staff is proposing this item is because the Commission will not meet again until October 18th. And so it would not have the opportunity to weigh in on any amendments to legislation that are made after today's meeting, if that were necessary. And finally, the third action in this item pertains to federal legislation. As previous speakers have noted, the Senate recently passed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And earlier this summer, the House passed the Invest in America Act. And as Chair Norton pointed out, the Invest Act in particular included the requests that CTC, CalSTA, and Caltrans had requested from our state's congressional delegation this past spring. There's a high-level summary of the bills in your book item, and previous speakers have talked about it, so I won't go through those again. But as I mentioned at our last commission meeting, the California Federal Affairs Working Group, which consists of CalSTA, CTC, Caltrans, various local agencies and stakeholder groups, recently reconvened and had been working on a consensus letter regarding infrastructure legislation to send to the congressional delegation. There's a draft of the letter in attachment B of your book item, which focuses on 6 priority areas: climate resiliency, active transportation, equity, zero emission bus grants, financing, and goods movement. Staff is recommending that you endorse this letter. And staff recommends you approve this item.
Thank you. And Paul, are you recommending that we can take one vote on all of the action items you discussed rather than having to do individual votes on the 3 things that you brought up with us?
Yes, unless any commissioner would like to take them separately, I think you can do all 3 at once.
Wonderful. With that, could we entertain a motion in support of all 3 items?
Mr. Davis, I make the motion.
Chair Norton,
Yes, sir.
we do have an attendee with their hand raised for this particular item.
Okay, let me just get a second for the motion and then we'll move to public comment. So we have Davis move.
Alvarado second.
Alvarado second. Then we'll move to public comment.
We have one attendee with their hand raised at this time, Lisa Trefiletti. Lisa, you are free to unmute yourself and make your comment.
Muted. Am I unmuted? Thank you.
You are.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Trifoletti, and I'm here today representing the City of Inglewood. I'm a consultant to the city and a project manager for the Inglewood Transit Connector project. I just wanted to thank the Commission, Secretary Kim, CalSTA, and Caltrans for your tremendous support for the 1.6 mile fully elevated automated transit connection, the Inglewood Transit Connector, as part of your 2020 TIRSIP grant cycle. With your support and the funding that you provided, the city has made tremendous progress. We've advanced in environmental, we've advanced our project design and engineering and procurement. We are now working in lockstep with Metro to advance the governing authority, the Joint Powers Authority. We're continuing to secure additional project funding. We've moved into project development phase with the Federal Transit Administration. And we continue to work with our stakeholders across the region and up and down the alignment. And so the City of Inglewood enthusiastically supports the comprehensive transportation package in the California Comeback Plan. And in particular, the state's proposed $1 billion in funding for critical transportation projects to be completed in time for the 2028 Olympics. As you may know, the City of Inglewood is the home to the opening and closing ceremonies of the Olympics, and we're home to 4 venues for the Olympics. And we're now working with Metro, the South Bay COG, and many, many partners to identify a synergistic package of number of projects that would be complementary to the Inglewood Transit Connector, so that we would create a network of support for the heart of the Olympics venue. While we advance the project and the city's efforts to secure additional funding streams, we still have important gaps that must be addressed before the project can move forward. And this Olympics funding in the California Comeback Plan would be absolutely instrumental. It would allow us to achieve our schedule and make sure that we're operational in advance of the games. So we're very hopeful that the Comeback Plan is adopted. And we are respectfully requesting that the CTC and CalSTA, they think about providing special considerations for the Olympics funding, that they may not be subject to the same criteria as your traditional TIRSIP grants. We want to make sure that the Olympics funding truly advance projects that directly serve Olympic venues, that they advance projects that actually have the capacity to serve those Olympic venues, that they also advance projects that serve disadvantaged communities of color and priority populations. And clearly, these projects have to have demonstrated significant ridership, VMT, greenhouse gas reductions, without a penalty for already receiving TIRSIP grants. So we just want to make sure, that our support is stated out loud. We're very honored to be a partner. We know that while it's a critical, a clean tech project that would advance, the Olympics, it does have long-term benefits for the city and the region. It reduces cars, reduces off the road, reduces GHG. We're in a community that has long suffered from historic negative environmental impacts. And this city and region they're poised for growth, and we look forward to working with the state to complete the project. So we were happy to support the Commissioner Norton and Commissioner Liu last week, and we would love to host the entire CTC for another tour should you all be available. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Very important testimony. With that, we have a motion and a second. Douglas, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Eager.
Aye.
Commissioner Grisby.
Aye.
Commissioner Guardino.
Aye.
Commissioner Inman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe.
Aye.
Commissioner Liu.
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez.
Aye.
Commissioner Tavoloni.
Aye.
Chair Norton.
Aye.
The motion is approved.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll move to item 16, the budget and allocation capacity.
If I could, before we go to 16, could I just ask staff, I mean, with regard to the testimony, is this something that, you know, the motion we just passed, that if Mitch finds an opportunity to kind of weigh in, that we've authorized staff to do that? Because I assume that we tend to agree with the testimony.
We've raised the issue, Commissioner Liu, we've raised the issue in terms of examining the TIRSA issues of one and the other program, but yes, let's have Executive Director Weiss continue to pursue that. I've also contacted Secretary Kim on it, who sees that there's no issue.
Right, and not necessarily just this project specific, but the general issue of the Olympic investment money.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes.
Great, thank you.
That the Olympics money would not conflict with any project that previously got TIRSA funding. If so, we've asked Executive Director Weiss to look into it, and Secretary Kim has agreed to work with Executive Director Weiss if there are any issues in those guidelines.
I knew I could have presumed that you were on top of this, but it's good to get it on the record. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. With that, if we could move to budget and allocation capacity, Paul and Keith.
Yes, Commissioners. Tab 16 is an informational update from Keith Duncan of Caltrans Division of Budgets on transportation revenues assumed in the state budget, as well as our funding capacity for project allocations. Before turning to Keith's presentation, I wanted to note that Commission staff have compared the allocation capacity for the current year that he'll discuss with the expected allocation requests. And based on that analysis, we believe there may be an ability to advance projects for the active transportation program and the 3 SB1 competitive programs. Requests to advance, however, would still need to be individually reviewed and assessed with current capacity levels at the time any such request is made. And with that, Keith, you want to start your presentation?
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. Again, Keith Duncan, Caltrans Division of Budgets, and I'll be providing the budget and allocation capacity update. And thank you, Paul, for the comments about the potential advancements, especially for those SB competitive programs. Definitely excited to try to get that capacity to work as soon as possible. To start with this presentation, with the most recent 2020-2021 fiscal year just ending, we wanted to provide a little bit of a summary. So the first couple slides are just kind of some wrap-up activities. In total, for last fiscal year, the Commission allocated about $5.3 billion of the total $7 billion across all the transportation programs. That represents about 75% allocated for the year. The two performers, from a dollar perspective, the SHOP, we've allocated about a little over $3.1 billion, which equated about 93% allocated for the year. And for the STIP, allocated about $704 million, which equates to about 120%. And 120% is an overrun. What that accomplishes is not only were we able to allocate and get the funding, the allocation capacity to work for the entire fiscal year, but also got a jump start for this next fiscal year's allocation capacity. So in this case, there was great planning on that regards. Next slide, please. Next slide here is similar to what we've provided to you in the past, just to show how this past fiscal year compared to prior fiscal years. The green line represents the 2020-2021 fiscal year, and as you can see, it trailed below most throughout the fiscal year. We did see a nice increase from March to June, but still we ended the year about 75%. But overall, those funds that are not allocated for those amounts that are able to be transferred over will be rolled over to the most current fiscal year, so we can get those funds allocated for those respective programs. Next slide, please. And finally, as part of our 2020-2021 wrap-up, we wanted to share the transportation revenue update. As you recall, this entire fiscal year was impacted by the pandemic. Previous projections or pre-pandemic projection levels were about $12.8 billion. And as noted on the slide, it was estimated to be about 11.6, so an estimated reduction of about $1.2 billion. So this chart compares the enacted budget projections to actual revenue received through June. And with the exception of gasoline, the other major transportation revenue sources did exceed their projection levels. And just a minor point, as we began last fiscal year with a lot of the counties, just a shutdown, we knew that the gas was going to kind of catch up gradually throughout the fiscal year. We did start the year about 8 to 10% lower than the projected amount, so there was a bit of recovery, especially over the last couple months of the fiscal year. But overall, from a bottom line perspective, you can see that the projections and were quite identical to what was actual. So kudos to the Department of Finance for their overall projection model. Next slide, please. So as we transition to this current new 2021-22 fiscal year, we wanted to share the final allocation capacity for the funding that the Commission will be allocating, hopefully in its entirety, through this new fiscal year. In this slide, in total, you're looking at about $8.2 billion across all of the transportation programs within the CTC's purview. We've detailed this slide out just to kind of show the different contributants to why the adjustment is. The first row there that's identified as draft, that's the allocation capacity that we presented to you back in June, the total of about $5.9 billion. The row identified as rollover, that's the amounts that we did not fully allocate from last fiscal year that now rolled over this year, so it's a little over $1.5 billion in total there. And the third row represents adjustments. These adjustments are identified as we finished up the fiscal year, as well as the enactment of this new budget. There's adjustments that needed to be made to a couple of the programs, and just to case in point, the SHOP and the STIP, respectively the 486 and the 243, that represents the budget authority associated with the COVID Relief Act funding that the Commission approved the distribution late last fiscal year. The budget authority was built into this most recent enacted budget, so we wanted to make sure that adjustment was taken into account. The TIRCP adjustment of $69 million, that's a true up when it comes to the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund auction proceeds. The auction proceeds actually came in about $69 million higher than originally projected, so we wanted to make sure that was taken into account for the program. And then the reduction of about $1.5 million for the Aeronautics program. Initially, when it came to the 2020 Aeronautics Fund estimate, we anticipated a transfer of about $4 million from the local airport loan account fund, but in actuality, it was, the transfer was $2.5 million. So that adjustment there, it is in line with the program allocation plans. So that's why we wanted to make sure that adjustment was taken into account. And again, in total, we're looking at about a little less than $8.2 billion available for allocation by the Commission. Looking at the agenda over the next 2 days, we're looking a little over $1.5 billion, so we can get a nice amount started as we begin this fiscal year. Next slide, please. Finally, for some upcoming events, as is within its name for August, we have a federal August redistribution. We're waiting any day now, word from FHWA. As you recall, last federal fiscal year, we were quite successful, the highest amount in well over 10 years as a state. So we're definitely eagerly awaiting the results there. And then September, it's already been touched on quite a bit, the FAST Act the reauthorization of the Surface Transportation Act, and then the ongoing discussions about the infrastructure bill. So we look forward to working with Commission staff, and as more details become available as the acts are and the bill is enacted, we will be working swiftly to ensure that we get the necessary additional budget authority so we can get to spending on that funding once it's made available. Next slide, please. With that, I want to send my thanks to CTC staff, Caltrans Financial Programming, as well as Caltrans Budgets, Revenue, and Capital and Finance teams for all of their help in today's presentation, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item?
Chair Norton, we do not have any public comment on item 16. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to have you go back to the chart on the revenues and anticipated revenues, including gas tax, and in the presentation. And I just wanted to ask, is the fact that there's been little drop in the gas tax revenue due to gas tax usage or the increase in gas costs? So it's a percentage of a higher per gallon fee.
The overall revenue the decline in revenue is based on the decline in consumption. The increase associated with the SB1, the inflationary increase for excise tax, actually helps soften some of that decrease. but we saw a drastic decrease in consumption, which drove to this decrease that's on the screen.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, I think that's all the questions. Appreciate it. And it's good to see, even though we had a reduced use of gas, that our revenues are still holding pretty strong. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, we are, as we said, we are going to keep item 17 until after 3 o'clock. So if we can move to item 18, the draft 2021 Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan Update, Brigitte and Scott Sauer.
Thank you, Chair Norton. Commissioners, tab 18 is an informational item. I want to highlight a change in the agenda. Scott Sauer, Office Chief of Multimodal System Planning at Caltrans, will provide an update on the development of the 2021 Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan, or ITSP. The ITSP is a long-range planning document that provides a vision for investing in California's interregional transportation system to support the movement of people and goods. The ITSP provides a framework that guides project selection for the Interregional Transportation Improvement Program, also known as the Itip. Caltrans released the draft ITSP on August 2nd and will be accepting comments through September 10th. We look forward to receiving an update on the ITSP at the October meeting when the Commission considers approval of the final plan. With that, I will hand it over to Scott.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Norton and the CTC Commissioners. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak before you and the rest of the Commission. Marlon would love to be here. I apologize for that. He is not feeling well, so he'd definitely rather be doing this than being sick. So next slide, please. Bridget already covered a lot of this, but the ITSP is one of the 6 modal plans that implements the California Transportation Plan. 2 of the modal plans that it draws a lot from is the California State Rail Plan and the California Freight Mobility Plan. Those are 2 key elements of the interregional system. We will update this every 5 years to be consistent with the CTP, and it is the planning document for the ITIP. And as everyone is probably familiar with, one of the key elements of the plan is the ITIP scoring criteria, which is in the appendix of the document. Next slide, please. This is just a quick overview of kind of the interregional system. We broke the state out into 8 major regions across the state, and that's the map on the left, and the arrows are the general direction people cross between those different regions. And the map on the right are the strategic interregional corridors in the plan. And those are the general travel patterns between regions. It's not exactly precise on the measurements, but really we kind of think those as the tree trunks of interregional system linking people and goods across the state. And then there's branches going to individual routes connecting within those regions, connecting to different communities. Next slide, please. And this is a key map with, these are the priority interregional facilities. So in the last map, we showed the strategic interregional corridors, so the general travel patterns. These are the key facilities, highway and rail facilities that link people and goods across the state. And so these kind of replace the old focused routes, but these are the priority interregional facilities. Next slide, please. I want to kind of show you where the ITSP, we talked a little bit about in the second slide here. So the top level in red, those are the general statewide policy documents that we have. There's other ones, but these are the key ones. Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, CAPTI, California Transportation Plan 2050, CTP 2050. So these generally have the overall statewide policies. The next row are the modal plans that implement the CTP and CAPTI, all those statewide policies. ITSP obviously is highlighted in orange there, and then of course the rail plan and the freight plans are next to it. So those provide a lot of information, but all of the plans should be integrated with the ITSP. The last row on the bottom, the ITIP is the one that's highlighted because that's the planning, the program that ITSP provides guidance for, but other funding sources are out there that can fund interregional transportation, as you all know, and these are just a selection of the key ones, but there's a lot of other ones out there. Next slide, please. I'm going to highlight a few of the key changes from the last ITSP, the 2015 version. First of all, it is a much shorter document. The 2015 ITSP was 183 pages. This one's 70 pages. we've pared it down to be more of a policy document to give you a good understanding of really the direction we're going and the policies out there. It is aligned with CAPTI, CTP 2050. The 2015 version was also aligned with CTP, but the 2040 version, the 2020 California Rail Plan, Freight Mobility Plan, apologize, the 2018 California State Rail Plan. We will be coordinating with the development of the 2022 State Rail Plan. And then Regions Rise Together, that's the statewide initiative of the governor. So that's also being incorporated in the plan. There are a few changes in the priority and original facilities. We haven't deleted any this cycle. Interstate 8, Interstate 40, and State Route 132 were added. The interstates, obviously, they have connection to different states, so that's definitely interregional. And we added State Route 132 to extend the 580 corridor between the Bay Area and the Central Valley through from I-5 to 99 to get that connection, because those are two key facilities there. We're also acknowledging that the previously programmed projects that haven't been completely funded are still a priority for ITIP. That's part of the plan here, and it will remain a priority. Next slide, please. Just to give you a quick overview, there's 3 chapters. The first one's just an introduction. It's the overview of the state and a description of the interregional system. Next, chapter 2 has the interregional transportation, our vision and objectives and how it aligns to other plans and policies. And chapter 3 are summaries for the strategic interregional corridors, and I'll tell you, show you a slide next on that. And then the appendix obviously has the ITIP scoring criteria. Next slide, please. And so these are the goals that we have here for the ITSP. They are the same as the CTP. As I said, we're implementing it. So there's safety, climate, equity, quality of life, accessibility, quality of life and public health, accessibility, economy, environment, infrastructure. Some of these are a little bit more new from the previous version. I know equity, we have a statement of equity for the department. We're definitely going to be integrated. We've integrated that into the plan. We'll make sure it's fully integrated. Quality of life and public health and climate change, but all of these are important. Safety is always a priority for us. So next slide, please. So this is the corridor summary. So for the 11 strategic and interregional corridors, we'll have a map. We'll identify the priority interregional facilities. We'll give you a quick summary on that corridor, and then we have some examples of strategies and improvements for that corridor. These are relatively high level, and these are just some expand trucking, parking, improve emergency evacuation alternatives, increase intercity passenger rail service. These are relatively high level. We are going to continue after this document's done. We'll have established the policies and the strategies. What we're going to do is really go in a lot more in depth and identify those strategies and improvements more specific to those individual corridors. So that will be a continuing process. And that will provide guidance for future ITIP decisions. So that will be the next step in the plan. So next slide, please. The director mentioned on the 12th of August, we did have a workshop on the ITIP scoring criteria. This is one of the factors we'll do in analyzing projects for consideration for ITIP. These are just some of the general categories that we have for the criteria. There are 15 questions in the criteria: safety, mobility, climate, health, equity, and engagement, leveraging other funds. So these are the general categories, but you can look in the document to get all. I didn't want to list all 15 of them on the document. They'll have that. But if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Next slide. And this is the schedule. You've seen a lot of this already. We added the ITIP to this. We just want to show the connection between the two. The workshops, the 12th, 24th, and 26th. Draft ITSP comment period ends on September 10th. The final plan, as was mentioned before, to October 1st. And then, of course, we want to get that done before the draft ITIP is submitted to the CTC on October 15th. And you know all this. December 15th, submit the final ITIP, and then the North and South hearings in January. And then, of course, you adopt the STIP in March. As I said before, after we get done with this plan, we will be doing further analysis on these corridors to have a lot more strategies, more details into these. So that would be influence future ITIP scoring criteria decisions. But we'll be working on that next. So next slide, that should be it. So yes, this is our website. That's the email to contact us. I'm more than willing to speak to any group that wants to talk about this, or if you have questions. We have the workshops, but feel free to send a contact the email, and I'll be willing to speak at pretty much any place. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Any questions or comments?
We have 2 items of public comment, and then I'll ask if my colleagues want to provide comments right now. Justin?
Thank you, Chair Norton. Up first, we have Mike Woodman. Mike, you're free to unmute yourself and make your comment.
Chair Norton, fellow commissioners, Mike Woodman, Executive Director of the Nevada County Transportation Commission and Chair of the North State Super Region, representing the 14 northern RTPAs and our 2 MPOs in Butte and Shasta County. The North State Super Region appreciates Caltrans' engagement on the ITSP update and Caltrans' acknowledgement of the climate change related wildfire impacts that continue to worsen and impact California each year through the inclusion and consideration for the need for evacuation improvements in consideration for ITIP funding decisions. These projects must be made a priority. I just got an update that there's a new fire that just started in Lake County. So, you know, the fire season continues to get worse. However, the North State Super Region has also expressed concerns that the weighted scoring criteria may disadvantage rural counties. The scoring criteria in both of the previous 1998 and the 2015 ITSPs didn't include a weighted scoring criteria. Rather, they indicated the key factors and issues that are part of the consideration for ITIP funding decisions. And this was mainly in recognition that the state of California is diverse and projects addressing the ITIP community concerns and needs for a project in Shasta County may be very different than projects in Los Angeles County, but still equally important. Previous plans provided Caltrans the subjectivity and flexibility to acknowledge and recognize the differences in making funding decisions. And, you know, we look forward to working with Caltrans to address these concerns. And I want to thank Scott Sauer for reaching out to us in expressing our concerns and his willingness to meet with us and sit down and talk about these concerns. So look forward to continuing to work with Caltrans on these important issues, and thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Liu? Oh, we have one more public comment, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Norton. Up next, we have Sarkis Kachek. Sarkis, you're free to unmute yourself and make a comment.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair Norton and Commissioner Sarkis Kachek with the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments. Thank you to Scott Sauer and the Caltrans team for a transparent and collaborative process with the development of the ITSP. We're appreciative of that. We would like to express our support for language in the ITSP and related to the scoring criteria related to completion of corridors and projects that previously received ITIP funding. There remain some critical interregional corridors that act as emergency evacuation routes, especially when certain routes are closed down to natural disasters or to inclement weather. So we would like to express our support for that within the ITSP, and we are thankful for our partnership with the CTC and Caltrans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm not being loosey with the football, Joe. It's Commissioner Liu, it's time for you to talk.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chair Norton. Scott, I submitted some pretty detailed questions to staff, I think passed along to you guys. And I think it would be probably helpful if we could schedule some time to discuss the issues I raised, and perhaps Commissioner Inman would like to join on the goods movement related ones. It seemed to me just substantively in the document that, you know, for the thing I'm familiar with, which is Southern California goods movement issues, the analysis and the vision and the strategy could be much more comprehensive and transformative in its vision and considerations. Maybe not, you know, full-on commitments, but at least thinking creatively long-term about what the solutions might look like, especially during these times. So that's one issue. I had some others too. Certainly about equity. I think, I'm glad to see the goal of, including equity as a goal in it, but I think you need to incorporate that, more specifically, especially in the scoring criteria, but also in the list of, documents. You say, well, this is consistent with all these other plans. I would add in that it's also, supposed to be consistent with the equity statement that the department adopted. So that would be helpful too. Anyway, the other specifics I can wait until we get a chance to discuss in detail, but I think it would be really helpful in the scoring criteria to add an equity component, a criterion to those scoring criteria, because that would really signal to people that we're taking, equity seriously and are actually going to look at it and score, your proposals based on it. Thank you.
Thank you. We did get those questions and they're very, very helpful. So we appreciate that. And we're definitely looking at it, and we're definitely looking into the equity and making sure that we feel that it does reflect equity throughout the document. We want to make sure we're not missing anything with not only the statement itself, but in the scoring criteria. So we're open to that. So we'd appreciate to have that for further, a more detailed discussion. That would be great. But we've already dove into that, and it's been helpful already, your comments. So
if staff could put that on a list of things to do to help schedule that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Does that conclude your remarks, Commissioner Liu? Oh, yes, it does. Commissioner Inman.
Oh, my lights just went out. I didn't move around enough in that energy statement. Anyway, yeah, I'd welcome the opportunity to work with Commissioner Liu and Caltrans on that as well. And just wanted to bring up the fact that we received that federal highway notice about freight throughput reliability, whatever the proper terminology is. And I think we're in the process of filing an amendment of why we didn't hit our goals. So I think there's a whole bunch of dynamics here. Yep. And clearly the goods movement sector crosses region after region after region. And finally, I would encourage that whatever work we can do with the Army Corps of Engineers may be very, very helpful in looking at some causal analysis, and really, hopefully we can use their big supercomputers to help us really understand some of the dynamics of some of these freight flows. So happy to work with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other comments from commissioners? Okay. Thank you. If not, we will conclude item 18 and look at item 19. Bridget, can you present what you have for an action item today?
Yes. Commissioners, tab 19 is an action item. Staff recommends the commission delegate the authority to staff to submit comments on the draft 2021 Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan and report back at the October meeting. Staff recommends your approval.
Okay. Can we get a motion, please?
Maloney, move it. By Operato.
Okay. Douglas, could you please read the roll?
Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Eager.
Aye.
Commissioner Grisby.
Aye.
Commissioner Guardino.
Aye.
Commissioner Inman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe.
Aye.
Commissioner Liu.
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez.
Aye.
Commissioner Tavaloni.
Aye.
Chair Norton.
Aye.
Chair, the motion is approved.
Thank you. And thank you to Scott Sauer for his presentation, especially jumping in for Marlon Flournoy at the last minute. Thank you so much, Scott. That was really appreciated.
No problem. Thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate it.
Of course. Okay, Teresa, we have items 20 and 21, the hearing on the 2022 State Transportation Improvement Program guidelines.
That is correct. Thank you, Madam Chair. Tab 20 is the 22 STIP guidelines hearing. The guidelines, this is to receive final comment on the proposed final guidelines for the 22 STIP. These guidelines are found under attachment B and C of tab 21. Government code requires the commission to adopt STIP guidelines to describe the policy, standard, criteria, and procedures for the development, adoption, and management of the STIP. Statute further requires that prior to amending the STIP guidelines, at least one public hearing be held. The guidelines have two parts. The specific section of the guidelines discuss specific on the 22 STIP regarding schedule and funding specific to the guidelines, as well as other provisions that are specific. The permanent guidelines are really the management, the development and the management of the guidelines. The draft 22 STIP guidelines were presented to the commission at the June commission meeting. Commission staff held one workshop in July and where the regions and Caltrans participated. Comments received were either incorporated or discussed, and some of them were not incorporated. So it was a very, very good discussion at the workshop. Changes to the specific guidelines since the draft was presented to you is only on the schedule. We moved the submittal of the draft Itip to October 15th at the request of Caltrans. This is to correlate for the ITSP in the earlier presentation. We normally, per statute, the final date the Itip can be submitted is October 15th. We normally ask for the Itip a few weeks early, but we did accommodate Caltrans's request. As a result of that, we are not going to be able to hold our hearings that are required around the commission meeting. And we still don't have dates confirmed. We will come back to you to let you know what the dates will be. Statute requires the hearings be held prior to October 15th. We have to hold two, one in the north, one in the south. Commission can hold additional hearings if they deem appropriate. Significant changes to the permanent guidelines since June are in section 19. We are asking that the regional transportation improvement programs include a description of any actions taken to protect the state's most vulnerable populations. Under section 34B, we changed this section to read that all new investments proposed for funding in the Itip must include a discussion on how these investments were informed by the approved ITSP. Also in this section, we changed the language to say that Caltrans shall provide an assessment of system needs on the strategic interregional corridors identified in the approved ITSP, including potential improvements or strategies, and report annually starting in December 2022. We are also requesting that by the 2024 STIP, this assessment includes all 93 routes that are specified in Streets and Highways Code. We acknowledge this is a significant undertaking for Caltrans, and Commission staff is committed to continue working with Caltrans to determine the level of assessment and the timing of all the 93 routes. The last section I want to highlight is section 49. This clarifies that all funding agreements entered into by the implementing agencies and funding partners must be consistent with STIP guidelines. Madam Chair, those are the sections I wanted to highlight. Staff recommends you open the hearing for public comment.
Okay, let's consider the hearing open. Do we have any public comment on item 20?
Chair Norton, I do not see any public comment at this time.
Okay.
Okay. Are we closing the hearing now?
Yes, we are.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Let's consider the public comment period and closed, and we'll move on to your next recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, tab 21 is an action item. Staff recommends that you adopt the 22 STIP guidelines as presented in attachment B and C. Staff also recommends you authorize staff to make minor technical changes as needed to the guidelines. Staff recommends your approval.
Okay. Since this is an action item, could we get a motion to approve?
Motion by Alvarado. Second, Tavalani.
Okay, Douglas, could you please read the roll?
Commissioner Alvarado,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Eager,
Aye.
Commissioner Grisby,
Aye.
Commissioner Gordino,
Aye.
Commissioner Inman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe, Commissioner Kehoe, Commissioner Kehoe, we can't hear you if you're trying to talk. Commissioner Liu,
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez, Commissioner Tavaloni,
Aye.
Chair Norton.
Aye.
Chair, the motion is approved.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, before we move on, could I just, for the sake of transparency, let the other commissioners and stakeholders who are participating in this know that I've asked staff to consider including an equity performance evaluation criterion for the next version of this, and they have committed to working on that. I just want to put that out there so that people know that they're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. I appreciate this, and because we're still waiting until after 3:05 for item 17, we are going to move to item 22, the adoption of the 2022 State Transportation Improvement Program and Aeronautics Account Fund Estimates. Paul?
Commissioners,
Thank you.
tab 22 is an action item to adopt the 2022 STIP and Aeronautics Account Fund Estimates. Staff has worked with Caltrans over the last several months on the development of the fund estimates, including some recent revisions to ensure we're maximizing the funding capacity available for both the SHOP and the STIP. Keith Duncan from Caltrans will present in more detail the proposed fund estimate, and staff is recommending you approve this item.
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon again, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, and Keith Duncan with Caltrans Division of Budgets, and providing the proposed 2022 STIP and Aeronautics Fund Estimate for you today. Next slide, please. As Paul mentioned, I wanted to share some of the milestones that we've covered over the last several months together as part of this collaborative process. Back in January, that we provided an overview of the STIP fund estimate development process, ensuring that there was a collaborative, interactive process, as well as very deliberative, and making sure that we're, as Paul mentioned, maximizing all available resources to try to maximize available programming capacities for the coming years. In March, we presented the draft assumptions, and then following in May, the Commission approved those assumptions. And those assumptions were the basic structure, providing us the data sets and the foundation to finalize the fiscal forecast model for the development of the overall fund estimates. In June, we presented to you the draft fund estimate for both the STIP, the SHOP, as well as the Aeronautics fund estimate. In July, we participated on the STIP workshop successfully facilitated by CTC staff. And then now here on August 18th, we're presenting you the final fund estimate for both the STIP, the SHOP, and the Aeronautics for your consideration and adoption. Next slide, please. One of the commitments we made, or one of the many commitments we made, but back in June, based on the draft fund estimate, was making sure that we provide you any updates, any changes that we have potentially made between June and this point in time. One of the biggest updates was, as we start the new fiscal year, when it comes to each of the major funds, we update the cash balance of each of those major funds as of July 1st. So in looking at the tables within your book item, as well as what will be included in the fund estimate booklet itself, we updated the starting fund balance for state highway account, public transportation account, road maintenance rehabilitation account, as well as the aeronautics account. Coincidentally, also at the end of the fiscal year, the team also made it a point to review and analyze all the year-end data that became available once the closure of the fiscal year, reviewing revenue data, interest earnings, expenditure trends compared to the overall commitments throughout the month of July. And as Paul mentioned, we were able to eke out a little bit additional capacities for the respective programs. To be more specific, within the STIP, we were able to identify an additional $65 million over the 5-year fund estimate period. That represents a little over 3% increase. Not much, but it is more than what was originally identified. And then for the SHOP, we were able to identify an increase of about $1 billion over the 5-year fund estimate period, and that represents a little less than 5% increase to what we presented to you back in June. For the aeronautics account, there's a slight decrease of about $500,000 over the 4-year fund estimate period, and that represents about a 5% decrease. Next slide, please. So in total, on the slide today, these are the basic tables for both the SHOP and the STIP. In total, for the SHOP, we are looking at a total SHOP target capacity of about $21.8 billion. The remaining commitments, when it comes to those projects that have yet to be allocated from the 2020 SHOP, that represents about $8.4 billion. So in total, we're looking at about $13.4 billion available for building of the next 2022 SHOP for the next cycle. And for the bottom portion of the table there, for the STIP target capacity, in total for the 5-year period, we're looking at about $2.1 billion of total available target capacity. In relation to commitments there, there's still about a little less than $1.3 billion of unallocated projects that were part of the 2020 STIP program that are expected to come forward over the next couple of years. So that equates to an available allocation capacity of about $808 million over the fund estimate period. Next slide, please. For this table here, wanted to share just the update regarding the aeronautics account fund estimate summary. We may not have provided these details in the past, but just to be a little specific, when it comes to the aeronautics account, the primary revenue source is excise tax on aviation fuel, which is 18 cents per gallon, as well as excise tax on jet fuel, which is 2 cents per gallon. Overall commitments, you do have our state operations, the Caltrans Aeronautics program, administering for local airports. For local assistance, we have our annual credit program, which is about $1.5 million annually, as well as about, this is where the airport improvement match program, as well as the acquisition development programs, that's where the available capacity is intended to be allocated towards. Overall, when it comes to the capacity for the aeronautics account, capacity is highly dependent upon the aeronautics assumption 11, which is included in our original assumptions document, but that assumes an annual transfer of $2.5 million from the local airport loan account fund to the aeronautics account to continue to be able to allocate to these aeronautics programs. We do want to point out that when it comes to that transfer, we did have an approved budget change proposal that was to transfer $2.5 million a year for a 4-year period. That 4-year term is set to expire in 23-24, but over this next fiscal year, we'll be working closely with the Department of Finance and keeping CTC staff apprised as to what solutions we can get in place to continue those annual transfers for 24, 25, and beyond. Next slide, please. So in short, or in summary, for the next steps, the department is recommending for your consideration and for your adoption of the proposed 2022 STIP fund estimate as identified in the resolution in your book item today. Once adopted, we will work to publish an electronic version of the fund estimate booklet online within 60 days, and then we will work to also provide it in print based on requests shortly thereafter. In relation to the final point there, and it is one of the more important ones here, and it goes to the prior discussions in relation to the federal funding that's under consideration. The department will work very closely with commission staff to provide any updates that we're aware of when it comes to the available funding decisions at the federal level. If there is a need that we, between now and October or even following, the commission can request and we can work together to amend the fund estimate. It is allowed in government code, so once you take action, you are able to adopt the fund estimate today. We can work to amend the fund estimate for your approval in January. By taking this action, by adopting the fund estimate today, you provide the opportunity for both the program managers for the STIP and the SHOP to be able to start their deliberative process and developing their respective programs based on the available capacities. And then once, if we do move forward with an amended fund estimate, they'd be able to revise that based on those more updated numbers. But we'll definitely be working closely with commission staff as we move forward as that data becomes available. Next slide, please. With that, I want to express my deep thanks to CTC staff, Caltrans Financial Programming, Caltrans Budget Fund Estimate Management Team, local agency partners. This has been a collaborative effort, a lot of information sharing, a lot of digging into the details The more communication, the better the product. And we just want to thank everybody for their involvement in this entire process over the last several months. It has been exhaustive work for us all, so we're definitely excited for this next steps. And with that, I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. I see we have no public comment. So commissioners, are there any comments that you have? If not, can we entertain a motion on item 22?
Motion to approve.
Eager? And a second? Perfect. Douglas, can you please read the roll?
Commissioner Alvarado,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Eager,
Aye.
Commissioner Grisby.
Aye.
Commissioner Grisby, Commissioner Guardino,
Aye.
Commissioner Inman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe,
Aye.
Commissioner Liu,
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez. Commissioner Martinez, I didn't hear you.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Tavaloni,
Aye.
Chair Norton.
Aye.
Chair, the motion is approved.
Thank you so much. And with that, we are now after 3:05 and we can take up item 17, the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, Resolution G2160. Matthew?
Yes, thank you, Chair Norton, and good afternoon, Commissioners. Tab 17 is an action item to approve a resolution in support of the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure Framework's commitment to addressing climate change, equity, active transportation, public health, and the reduction of congestion through innovative strategies designed to encourage people to shift modes within the existing statutory framework for funding transportation projects. Specifically, this resolution will direct Commission staff through its public guidelines development process to work towards updating the appropriate program guidelines to address implementing the following the relevant Commission-led CAPTI strategies. Governor Newsom's executive orders N1919 and N7920 charged CalSTA in collaboration with Caltrans and the Commission and other state agencies to develop a framework to leverage state transportation funds in order to help the state meet its climate goals. CalSTA assembled an interagency working group in which Commission staff participated to create an action plan that aligns state transportation investments with the state's climate goals while protecting public health and prioritizing equity. The final report was published in mid-July. There are many strategies in the CAPTI that complement the Commission's commitment to addressing climate change, equity, active transportation, safety, public health, and the reduction of congestion through innovative strategies designed to encourage people to use multiple travel modes. It's also important to mention that CAPTI acknowledges that not all transportation projects serve the same purpose or have the same results, and that there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to this issue. Highway capacity improvements, when they are strategically employed, can benefit numerous travel modes, improve safety, and increase funding options to support ongoing roadway improvements and transit time reliability. I also want to call out some ways the Commission has collaborated with CalSTA, as well as outline some past and ongoing efforts that the Commission has committed to, which are in alignment with the CAPTI. Commission staff have participated in CalSTA's interagency working group for the past 18 months, in addition to hosting 2 public CAPTI workshops held back on April 20th and April 23rd of this year to cover the proposed implementation of the CAPTI in each of its 7 strategies. These workshops gave CalSTA, Caltrans, and the Commission an opportunity to engage with stakeholders and respond to questions and comments in real time. Furthermore, the Commission has brought the CAPTI as an agenda item to each of its past 3 meetings, with this meeting's action item being the 4th. One example of an effort that the Commission is making in line with the action outlined in Strategy 1.4 to mainstream zero-emission vehicle infrastructure investments within the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program is recognition that each project that competes within the Commission's SB1 competitive program cycles requires a multitude of funding sources. And therefore, the Commission is posting a funding matrix which outlines different funding programs that fund zero-emission vehicles and infrastructure and freight. This funding matrix will offer applicants information on additional funding resources available to fund zero-emission projects throughout the state. And this is the first step towards helping mainstream these types of projects within the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. Another is in line with the action outlined in Strategy 2.4 to increase funding to the Active Transportation Program. the Commission recommended increasing state funding for the active transportation program in its 2020 annual report and subsequently submitted a budget request to augment the current program cycle. In response, the Budget Act of 2021 includes a $500 million one-time increase for the active transportation program from the general fund, which is of course pending the enactment of additional legislation prior to October 10th of this year. This is an important first step to addressing the backlog of active transportation projects, but ongoing funding is still required to meet the significant need for bicycle and pedestrian facilities throughout the state. Additionally, the Commission has highlighted the need for increased ATP funds from the federal government, which is currently under discussion at the federal level. Additionally, as we continue our focus on equity in transportation and within our programs, the Commission's Equity Advisory Roundtable has met twice and will meet again on September 16th. Russell Rawlings, who is a member of the Roundtable, and Commission staff member Sequoia Erasmus will provide an update on the status of the Commission work during their report tomorrow. At this time, I would sincerely like to congratulate Darwin Musavi, Secretary David Kim, and their team at CALSA on accomplishing such a major milestone. The task at hand to develop the CAPTI required an immense effort by their team, and the result is an important document to our state which outlines key strategies and actions as a framework to address California's climate crisis. I would now like to recommend the Commission's approval of Resolution G2160 as presented in this item.
Thank you. I believe we have, oh, wonderful. Secretary Kim, it's a pleasure to see you here, and we'd like to recognize you and your team.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to express my deep appreciation to you, Chair Norton, and the entire Commission and Commission staff, Matthew, Tanisha, Mitch, and many others for your truly strong partnership on CAPTI over the past almost 2 years. And I am so thrilled to see this resolution of support. I think it means a lot. And all of the comments and great feedback from every commissioner and commission staff helps make CAPTI a better product. And so I just want to thank you. And I really look forward to working with all of you to implement the various actions identified in CAPTI. So with that, thank you again for the resolution and for the great partnership.
Thank you. And Secretary Kim, we just want to thank you for, in all of these ways, when we were asking for additional hearings and additional outreach, you and your staff made themselves available to do additional presentations, to extend deadlines. It was very, very important to get such a comprehensive document, and we want to thank you for the work and the openness with which you approach this.
Thanks, Chair Norton. And I'm also remiss in not recognizing people on my team. Darwin Musavi, Avital Barnea, Alyssa Kano, and I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but it was truly a great team effort from CTC, CalSTA, Caltrans, and many others. So many state agencies and departments had a big role in this. So great teamwork by everybody. Thank you again for the resolution.
Thank you very much. If you can stay for commissioner comments and public comment, that would be wonderful. We do have one public comment.
Thank you, Chair Norton. Up first, we have Kaylee Courier. Haley, you are free to unmute yourself and make your comment.
Good afternoon. My name is Haley Courier. I am Policy Advocacy Manager at Transform. Having this vote in front of you is a really important moment for the state. It's of course occurring as wildfires rage and that are destroying homes and communities and choking air for millions. And it's on the heels of the publication of the IPCC report last week, describing the reality of the irrevocable impacts of climate change in excruciating detail. CAPTI is a really powerful framework, and it's aligned with the governor's executive order and input from stakeholders across the state, including Transform, for helping the state meet its climate goals. Transform strongly supports the resolution to approve CAPTI. Aligning our transportation spending with our state's greenhouse gas reduction goals is really essential to the future success of the state. It will lead to a stronger, more diversified economy that is ready for 21st century challenges. Improving transit options and land use decisions will lower out-of-pocket costs for working-class Californians. Commute time is the single strongest factor in the odds of escaping poverty. And by improving transit and active transportation options and reducing traffic congestion, CAPTI will save commuters in every region valuable time and money. It will improve air quality for everyone, and especially low-income communities and communities of color disproportionately impacted by tailpipe pollution. You all have the opportunity to guide this framework into implementation, and doing it right will provide for the next generation and improve access to opportunity and actually ensure that there is opportunity to be accessed. Transform is looking forward to continuing to work with the Commission and its staff to ensure program guideline alignment with the CAPTI framework. These programs provide important opportunities to improve life for all Californians, reducing congestion, pollution, improving travel times, creating more walkable, vibrant communities. Climate change is an existential threat and also an opportunity to build back better and grow the economy. So please support, Transform is supportive, and please support the resolution and direct staff to work toward updating program guidelines in alignment with the CAPTI framework.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next public comment.
Yes, up next we have Nicole Chang. Nicole, you're free to unmute yourself and make your comment.
Hello, my name is Nicole Chang. I'm a policy assistant with Climate Plan. We want to thank you, the CTC, for adopting CAPTI. We strongly, like Transform, urge you to adopt CAPTI. And we also want to thank the commissioners for weighing in over the last few months to see this through. We hope that the commissioners are encouraging staff to outline a clean plan for implementing CAPTI and as soon as possible. And Climate Plan and our network would love to weigh in on these efforts. So thank you for your time today, and also we look forward to working with you.
Thank you very, very much for your testimony. Commissioners, do you have any comments today on this resolution before we take a motion? Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank both, thank staff for all that they did to work to put this together and work to move it in a direction that makes sense for our state as we move to meet our climate goals. I guess the only comment I'd like to make is that, and I've said it over and over again, SB1 was sold to the public with certain ideas on what needed to happen and how the money should be spent. So I would hope that the guidelines, as they're modified, would take into consideration the promise that we made to the public in the votes that were taken by everybody in California. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Davis. I wanted to say, as someone who was appointed the day that Executive Order N1919 was also released by Gavin Newsom, and as a governor led on these issues, it has been very fascinating as we've been going out to the federal government and talking in the work that is now being done in the Biden administration, how often they refer to what California has been doing to lead. And I think that we have a unique partnership with Governor Newsom and this legislature and this president to complete a big agenda and to use these goals as a way of investing in each other. And we've seen in the report on item 14 that when we do make these investments, everybody wins in our economy and in our climate. And so I'm very excited to see how this is going to be imported into our guidelines. And I want to thank Executive Director Mitch Weiss and all of the CTC staff for your hard work to make sure that we were tracking with all of our programs and all of the promises made in SB1 and in defeating Prop 6, that we are ensuring that we are tracking with how we implement it and move forward in a way that, as Commissioner Davis said, keeps our promises to the voters, but moves our state forward and continues our role as a leader in the environment and as the 5th largest economy in the world. So thank you very much, Secretary Kim, for another great partnership together and with Caltrans. Seeing no other comments from my colleagues, let's entertain a motion on this resolution on CAPTI today.
I'd like to move adoption. Commissioner Liu.
Grisby likes a second.
Thank you, wonderful. Douglas, could you please read the roll?
Madam Chair, we got a last minute written comment I can read real quick.
Okay, and then after that last minute written comment, I also would like to recognize Executive Director Weiss before we take a vote.
Thank you. This
Justin?
is from,
Or Doug?
yep, it's from Jay Jordan. Thank you to Darwin and other staff who have worked hard on the CAPTI. It is an important direction for the state to go. We look forward to continuing to weigh in on meaningful implementation and to ensure that equity, environmental justice are centered in the actions that come from the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Mitch?
And I too received a public comment. Just note that the Coalition for Clean Air supports the resolution and is looking forward to working with staff on getting the CAPTI framework into program guidelines.
Thank you. Did you have any other comments on your behalf, Mitch?
No, I feel like my very long PowerPoint presentation set a record for me at a commission meeting, and in order to balance it out, I'm going to try to hold my comments for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you. Well, with that, we have a motion by Commissioner Liu, seconded by Commissioner Grigsby. Douglas, can you please read the roll?
Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Eager.
Aye.
Commissioner Grigsby.
Aye.
Commissioner Gordino.
Aye.
Commissioner Inman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe.
Aye.
Commissioner Liu.
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez.
Aye.
Commissioner Tavallone.
Aye.
Chair Norton.
Aye.
Chair, the motion is approved.
Exciting day. Congratulations, everyone. With that, thank you very much, Secretary Kim. Great to see you again. And we will go to item 23.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Item 23 is an informational item to hold the second public hearing on the California Aviation System Plan. Caltrans is in the final stages of updating the plan, which provides a framework for preserving and enhancing the state's aviation system. This is the first comprehensive update of this plan in about a decade. Staff would like to commend the Division of Aeronautics for their extensive work to undertake this plan update in collaboration with federal, state, regional, and local aviation partners. The Commission is statutorily required to review, hold public hearings on, and adopt this plan. The draft plan was released for public comment back in mid-November of 2020. The first public hearing was held at the December Commission meeting. Also in December, the Commission submitted formal comments to Caltrans on the draft plan, and Caltrans did provide a response to our comments in February of 2021. So this item will serve as the second required public hearing prior to plan adoption. So with that, Madam Chair, I will ask that you please open the hearing for any comments the public may wish to provide.
Thank you very much. The hearing is now open. Justin, do we have any public comments on this item for this hearing?
Chair Norton, I do not see any attendee indicating they wish to make public comment at this time.
Okay, Commissioners, are there any who wish to make a comment during this public comment time? Okay.
Madam Chair, I did have an issue that I think we've resolved with regard to emissions issues of greenhouse gases and criteria air pollutants. I think that's been ironed out though at this point, right?
Thank you, Commissioner Liu. We have had staff level discussions, and what I can offer is as part of the next tab, the Division of Aeronautics will make some brief remarks and we can further clarify the comments that you had.
Wonderful.
Okay, so
with that, I think we can close the public hearing. Thank you. And then we can move to item 24.
Okay, so item 24 is going to be an action item for adoption of the 2020 California Aviation System Plan. Staff is recommending your approval of the final plan. Prior to your action, we have asked Philip Miller, who is the acting chief of the Caltrans Division of Aeronautics, to provide a brief overview of changes that were made to the plan in response to Commission comments. So with that, I will turn it over to Philip.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity. And good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm also joined today by Matt Friedman, who's the Chief of the Office of Planning and our project manager on this project, Dennis O'Connor, whose tireless efforts along with CTC staff and many others helped put this critical document together. Thank you for the time and your review of the California Aviation System Plan, or the CASP, update of 2020, and the opportunity to review updates since the preliminary draft from December of 2020. As you may recall, January this year, the CASP 2020 final draft includes the following additional content of aviation's role in California: carbon intensity reductions from alternative jet fuel reported by the Bay Area Quality Management District, community engagement exemplified by the LAX Community Benefit Agreement. Contributions in July to the draft review of the governor's office included key points: declines in state aeronautics funds for the years following the 2008 recession were restored from approximately $2.6 million by fiscal year 2019 to approximately $6.1 million in the fiscal year 2020. Programs for state loans and grants have been clarified to indicate their additional capacity from past use, providing the guidance for the Aeronautics Division going forward. The division's capital improvement plan of 2019, as Appendix A, has been updated with the 2021 CIP that was recently approved by the CTC. This week, in consultation with the CTC staff and valuable input by Commissioner Liu, we added charts and graphs related to greenhouse gas emissions derived from a study conducted by the California Air Resources Board, identifying aviation's 1.1% contribution to the overall transportation segment's greenhouse gas emissions, with slight increases due to projected increases in traffic volume over time. CASP 2020 is comprehensive and complete for addressing aviation in California, taking its place among the modal plans that comprise the California Transportation Plan, CTP 2050. Thank you very much for your time. May my team and I assist you in any questions.
Thank you, and thank you for making those changes based on input from our Commissioner Liu. I see that we have no public comment, so commissioners, are there any comments you have to make on this item? If not, can we entertain a motion to approve the 2020 California Aviation System Plan?
I'll move the item, Commissioner Liu.
Okay, second. Thank you. Douglas, can you please read the roll?
Madam Chair, could you clarify who made the second?
Kehoe.
Thank you. Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Eager.
Aye.
Commissioner Grisby.
Aye.
Commissioner Guardino.
Aye.
Commissioner Inman. Commissioner Inman.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Kehoe.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Liu.
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez.
Aye.
Commissioner Tavoloni.
Aye.
Chair Norton.
Aye.
Chair, the motion is approved.
Thank you very much. Item 25 has been moved to October meeting, so we are going to move to our item 26, the adoption of the fiscal year 2021-22 road maintenance and rehabilitation account, local streets and roads funding. Alicia?
Thank you, Chair Norton. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tab 26 is an action item. It's the adoption of the fiscal year 21-22 road maintenance and rehabilitation account, local streets and roads funding, initial report of eligible cities and counties. For jurisdictions to be included in the fiscal year 21-22 initial eligibility report, they must adopt by resolution a list of projects that are expected to be funded with that fiscal year program's funds, for which eligibility is sought. The list and resolution had to have been received by the Commission no later than July 1st, 2021. By July 1st, 2021, we'd received 519 submittals from out of the total 539 total jurisdictions eligible to submit. All 519 were deemed eligible. They have been included in attachment B for the fiscal year 21-22 initial report of eligible cities and counties. We have confirmed that the remaining 20 jurisdictions are in fact coming in for subsequent eligibility. That will open up following the adoption of the initial eligibility list today. And they will have to have their submittals into the commission via the CalSmart reporting system by September 30th, 2021, which we will then be bringing the subsequent report to you for adoption at the October commission meeting. I would like to take this time to thank our team, Celeste Estevez, Zach Taylor, and Cherry Zamora for their hard work and dedication. They developed incredible technical trainings that were held to assist all of the jurisdictions. This was the best year we had in the way of submittals with the least amount of edits required and the least number of agencies who had to have returns sent to them for corrective action. And so we are very, very proud of their hard work and dedication and all of the hard work on behalf of the commission and jurisdictions. The commission, once we adopt, we will be transmitting all of the report and list to the state controller's office, who will then record our adoption and begin dispersing funds as of September 2021 to all 519 eligible cities and counties. They will reserve the funds for the remaining 20 until after October 31st, at which time, if whoever does not come in, they will then redisperse and recalculate the remaining funds as considered forfeited. At this time, staff would like to recommend that the commission adopt the fiscal year 2021-22 road maintenance and rehabilitation account, local streets and roads funding initial report of eligible cities and counties as provided in attachment B, and direct staff to transmit the list of eligible jurisdictions to the state controller.
Thank you so much to you and all the CTC staff you've been working with to make sure that there was technical advice given to all these cities who are still contending with COVID-19. It means so much to have a partner in CTC and its staff to make sure the cities are all eligible and can make themselves available for additional funding that is sorely needed. So thank you for your time and your leadership. With that, do we have a motion?
I'll move, Commissioner Davis.
Second, Martinez. Douglas, could you please read the roll? Davis, Martinez.
Whatever.
Thank you. Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Eager.
I guess so, yes.
You can second the next one, Commissioner.
No, I'm still on the draw.
Commissioner Grisby.
Aye.
Commissioner Gordino.
Aye.
Commissioner Inman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe. Commissioner Kehoe. Commissioner Liu.
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez.
Aye.
Commissioner Tavaloni.
Aye.
Chair Norton.
Aye.
Chair, the motion is approved.
Thank you very much. Items 27 through 38 are our information calendar. Tim Sobelman will be presenting these items to us.
Thank you, Chair Norton. Commissioners, items 27 through 38 are information items deemed acceptable and have no issues raised by staff. Therefore, individual items will not be presented unless specifically requested by a commissioner. Please note changes for items 28, 37, and 38 on the change list. Are there any questions?
No, commissioners, are there any who wish to pull items out of the information calendar? Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep, that concludes the presentation of the information calendar.
Okay, well then
On to consent?
Yes, we'll take items 39 to 51.
Thank you, Chair Norton. Commissioners, items 39 through 51 are consent calendar items for a vote of approval. Please note the changes to items 43 and 49 on the change list. For item 43, 5 uncontested resolutions of necessity were withdrawn prior to the CTC meeting. With these changes, Commission staff recommends approval for items 39 through 51 on the consent calendar.
Thank you. And before we take approval of the consent calendar, we have someone who wishes to speak on item 38 in public comment. So I'd like to go back and just make sure that we can take that public comment.
Chair, the person who indicated they wanted to speak to tab 38 did not join the webinar as far as we can tell. We do have a commenter for tab 39 though.
Okay. Let's proceed with that.
Thank you, Chair Norton. We have Mike Garabedian. Mike, you're free to unmute yourself and make your comment.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mike Garabedian with Placer County Tomorrow. Thank you for this opportunity to comment in this Commission's 43rd year. The concern we have is about the Placer County item adding a lane to Interstate 80 westbound in Roseville. We only learned yesterday, though we followed this project without looking at the plans, that this contemplates what is right now a westbound 2-lane off-ramp to southbound off-ramp to Douglas Boulevard. This, we are concerned, will create a safety problem, including possible backup. And it will make more complex what was the major project. Some members of the commission may recall for this 3-part interchange of I-80, Douglas Boulevard, and the southbound Sunrise Boulevard, involving a tunnel and a overcrossing from these 2 lanes that would be reduced, a left turn onto Douglas and immediate right turn to get down Sunrise Boulevard. It's not clear that this is a new proposal or is contemplated in the old one or takes in what the effect it would have on that. So we are hoping for an explanation about how this is indeed a safe change, if that has been contemplated, and looking forward to getting an answer on this safety issue. We feel that the safety issue is the need for making improvements in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm aware we have an additional public comment as well. And I know this public commenter asked a question of our staff. So Tim, do you want to field that before we take the other public comment?
Sure. I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
You know what? I think this is a STIP amendment for no action, so I can go ahead and respond.
Okay.
So this was noticed at the June meeting, and this project is a STIP project, and they want to put the their COVID relief funds on this project. This project was already programmed with TSEP funds, and with the STIP, it is really a priority that the region brings forward those projects and programs, their regional priorities. It is, so in terms of it being a safety, I do not see it in the book item. It just indicates that they will add westbound, in a westbound direction, they will make improvements to a 2-lane off-ramp. So this project is funded with TSEP funding, and it was determined to be an eligible project. And so we had no concerns really with this project, specifically as it relates to a STIP project.
Okay. Thank you, Teresa. If we could take the other public comment, because I think it may be in the same vein.
Okay.
Up next, we have Rick Carter. Rick, you're free to unmute yourself, make a comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon, Chair Norton and Commissioners. I am Rick Carter, the Deputy Executive Director at Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. And I'd like to provide some clarifying information in response to Mr. Garabedian's comments. He is correct that the project will reduce the off-ramp at Douglas from 2 lanes to 1 lane. However, this is not anything new. This is not a change. He noted in some written comments, he provided some text from a year 2000 CEQA document that is not the project description for this project. I believe that does come from the prior interchange reconstruction, but I haven't really confirmed that. This project had its environmental clearance in 2016. During the PA and ED phase, there were 2 design alternatives studied. Alternative 2 was eventually selected as the preferred alternative. In both those documents, it clearly describes the change with the westbound off-ramp from a 2-lane, existing 2-lane to a reduction to a 1-lane. The analysis that was done and included in that process shows that there is not a need for 2-lane exit at Douglas. The design year volumes forecasted in the peak hour are lower than the threshold for providing a 2-lane ramp. The design year freeway operations are level of service E or better. That single lane ramp, that single lane ramp meets design standards, and additionally, the safety analysis that was done did not show any concerns with that single lane ramp. So we'd like to just confirm that the proposed project is consistent with the environmentally cleared project description. And I'm happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
I have no questions, commissioners. Seeing none, I think we can take a motion on this item and all the items in the consent calendar. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
So Douglas, did you hear mover Alvarado, seconder, who was that? Tavaloni?
That's what I have.
Okay, great. Douglas, could you please do the roll?
Commissioner Alvarado,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Eager,
Aye.
Commissioner Grisby,
Aye.
Commissioner Guardino,
Aye.
Commissioner Inman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe, Commissioner Liu,
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez,
Aye.
Commissioner Tavaloni,
Aye.
Chair Norton.
Aye.
Chair, the motion is approved.
Thank you. Commissioners and the public, we are going to take another break between now and 4 o'clock. We are going to come back to do items 52, 53, and 54, and then all items after 59 that we can attend to before our 5 p.m. end of today, okay? Back at 4 p.m. Thank you.